it is something that you would definitely feel more excited about doing. It is Smart Men's Business, and we are here to engage, discuss, have key discussions on matters to do with business, and pretty much more of a wide scope of discussions that we're definitely going to be having. And in today's topic of discussion, we're going to be looking at advertising and clearly creativity in advertising, in a perspective of where, as a business person, you would choose to at least say that advertising is a big brand and it's actually a step up for your business to see that you either recover sales or record more sales and see changes in your business. And joining me this morning, I have Biarugaba Mark from the Uplift Creatives. Good morning, Mark. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
My name is Biarugaba Mark. I am the creative director at Uplift Creative.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Mark. If we were to look at the issue of Uplift, when we mention Uplift Creative, what is it all about?
Well, Uplift Creative largely generates communication content, right? We do generate content for advertising, largely animation and motion graphics. A lot of the content we do is for NGOs, right? It allows us to. The organization is called Uplift, so it is important to us that the messages we share, we convey to the general public are to improve their well-being, right, and their way of life, which is why a lot of our clients and the organizations we work with tend to be NGOs, whether they're dealing with children or refugees or nutrition. So that is the space we're in. We provide content to communicate on behalf of organizations that are mainly geared towards improving the welfare of Ugandans and East Africans on the whole.
Okay, for the viewer to understand more, what is creativity in advertising, or what is creative in advertising?
Well, creativity in advertising, generally advertising is mostly creativity. Okay. It's mostly largely creativity. All right. Whether it's generating the content or the message or even how you're going to disseminate this information, it's all creativity. You need to come up with new ways to both captivate and engage your audiences, right? Whether you're doing it for an NGO or you're doing it for a multinational corporation, regardless, you need to be able to captivate, right? So that is what advertising would be doing with creativity. Creative, in many agencies, ends up being its own department, I'd say, where they come up with the concepts and the ideas that would be that would help in disseminating or sharing this information, right? So if it is creative that you're referring to as a department or an organ in an ad agency, what we would be doing quintessentially is coming up with all the material that you interact with, right? So that in turn would mean that a lot of agencies have more than just the creative department. Like any other business, it would have accounting. Like any other business, it would have relationship management. Like any other business, it would have procurement and asset disposal department. All these, but creative specifically in advertising would be coming up with the content that you largely interact with, that the audience is going to be viewing, or that the general market is going to come into contact with.
Okay. All right. Now, speaking of creative, how does creativity, okay, like you said, if we had to relate to creativity in marketing, rather in advertising, advertising is creativity. But how do you relate with them now? For example, you at Uplift, if you are to come up with an advertising strategy, how do you relate these two? What is the instance of someone being too creative to come up with an advert?
Well, largely it's understanding your client and their target audience. Okay. Right? So that's where you start from. Right? So you begin with understanding what the client requires and who they would like to speak to, right? Then you need to understand how much resource you have, which is what the budget is and how much time you have to execute. Because given an infinite amount of money, you can go crazy and do everything you'd like just go out, do TV, outdoor media, do all that, right? But depending on the budget you have and the time you have to execute it, you have to come up with the best way to reach their target audience, right? So when you're coming up with this content, a lot of the times you will sit with the whole team, right? And then you can brainstorm, right? There is a production pipeline. As a creative director, it is my duty to oversee the production pipeline, right? It's your job to see to it that everyone is working in unison and has the same idea throughout, right? So for a lot of productions, we will do, say, for example, if we're doing an ad or an animation on, say, for example, puberty, right? Which is one of the projects we've been working on. You'd find sometimes the writer never meets the person doing the illustration, or the person doing illustration very rarely, or might not meet the person doing post-production. But as the creative director, you would be there every single step of the process, making sure that they all work in unison, like they are all in sync, right? So, like you said, how would I relate with if coming up with a concept, right? It's firstly understanding your client, the resource, and their target audience. Once you have these in place, then it's pretty much brainstorming. You move on as far and in any direction as you can, keeping these constraints in mind.
Okay, and how would one show creativity in marketing, for example? Now, for example, from the field of the creatives, I think this is where your main focus is, and an advertiser wants to see your potential from that particular field. But how would you show it?
Well, a lot of the times it's important to package yourselves very, very well, depending on who the client is, right? So with time, you build a portfolio. Every agency, everyone who does creative work, with time builds a portfolio. So you have past work and work that's to come. So a lot of the times when you go to bid for, say, for example, if you were competing for a contract at a client's offices, right? You each show up with your proposal, right? So the way to show your creativity is a lot of the times to show your track record, the work you've done previously, right? And then try and dazzle them with new ideas. In marketing, a lot of the times it can be the avenues you use for dissemination, right? In advertising. So a little while back, if people were using Google AdSense to advertise and you had Google ads popping up on your phone, a lot of clients saw that as really impressive. But now pretty much almost anyone can generate a pop-up ad on your cell phone, and that avenue has now kind of sailed. I'm sure you've seen a lot of 3D billboards that are very, very impressive, right? So these are the kind of things, this is the creativity they're looking for. They're always looking for something new and different. So the way you show your creativity is prepare your document, your mock-ups, everything. Mock-ups would be like, they'd be like synthesized images of what the end product should be. Again, while you're doing, at this stage, while you're pitching, you want to avoid also expending too much resource prior to securing the contract, right? Because it could put you in a funny space, in an odd space. But the thing is that you want to present your work the best way you can, right? So if you're going to show creativity to your client, show them a very well organized strategy from start to end, right? Go ahead and then inform them show them that you understand both their business and who their target audience is, right? Then from there you can develop strategies no one else is using. Most likely what they would like to see is something their competitor is not using. It would be nice for them to see things other businesses don't use, right? Avenues other businesses don't use. Either the media you're using, say for example, if you're in beverages, right? If you end up, a lot of the people who are in advertising for beverages, if in that particular field or in that particular market, everyone is using live action content and you're able to present animated content, you've gone in a totally different direction. If you can package it and present it well, then that's the kind of thing they're looking for. They're looking for work where you are showing them that it will be exceptional. It is important for them that their brand stands out, that it makes a splash, so to say. it is important for them that their brand stands out.
Okay.
Right? Anything you can add to what is currently running with their competitors or in the general market will be appreciated.
Okay.
And if it goes far enough, it will be recognized.
Okay. And how important is creativity in advertising? Because we may be discussing about how advertising is creativity, but you never know how important. Why would someone understand that it's very important to be creative when you're marketing or advertising something?
Actually, the thing is, a lot of people are fully aware of the importance of creativity when it comes to advertising. Because a large part of what we do is creativity, right? What people might not realize is that it is not the only aspect of what makes a good advert, right? Or it's not the only part of advertising that is vital, right? If you went into any agency, there are people who are doing all these other tasks that help creativity move along, right? Say, for example, I have seen with smaller, like startups, a lot of startups, agencies, you have one individual, and then this one individual is wearing all the hats in the company, right? So he does the accounting, he does market research, he does the relationship management, so all these are different departments, right? They are important, right? They are very, very important. Advertising is almost fully creativity. Advertising is almost fully creativity, right? There is a bit of number crunching when it comes to data collection, right? Because a lot of the times people want to see what's happening with your content. They want to see how it's performing. So they would like you, if it's online content, they would like you to present them with analytics to see how they have progressed with your content. Is the audience reacting or engaging it? This is something they'd like to see. Or if they have a accounting department, they would like to see if you're managing the funding and the logistics they have provided you with properly. These are all important bits, right? When people see advertising, the first thing they recognize is the creativity. They will see the visuals, right? The audio bits, those are the things they will recognize outrightly. So those are the things you cannot afford to cut corners on. So that is how important creativity is. If it is a badly presented visual, right? People are going to recognize that off the bat. Very few people are going to recognize that it was either too expensive or too cheap. No, people don't usually notice that. What they'll notice is they won't notice what the executives are going to notice, which is the feasibility or the funding on that. But the general public, anyone who's advertising, can see what is creative and what isn't, right? So creativity is so important in advertising because it is the one aspect you cannot afford to fail at. I have seen agencies that don't manage the funds they receive maybe as well, right? But the resource, the output is very good. So you find the agency maybe doesn't grow as fast, but the work is very good. The work is genuinely very good, and people will always notice it for it being good. So creativity is that important. It is the bit in advertising that you might not be able to cut corners on, right? Because once you fail in that space, then it would be recognized, it would be seen, the audience will see it right away that this is a very badly done piece of content. So it is why creativity is very important in advertising.
Okay. And speaking of that, if creativity is quite important in that way, but for the people who are actually not so good in creatives, I should say, what is the best way to actually think about? Because sometimes you may find out being creative, I think, starts from the mindset of somebody who sits down and thinks of something. But imagine if you're an advertiser and you're limited to, let's say, a team. You do not have enough human resource, but you've got all these gigs on you. What is the best way to at least think out of the box to create something that is way different from the previous? Because sometimes you will end up creating something that looks the same as the previous.
Oh yeah, that's the catch-22, I guess. So the thing is, even to utilize very little resource,
okay,
right, to generate the most, requires creativity.
Okay.
It does require creativity. So if you are not, so a lot of the times what we'll assume is that what constitutes creativity right? I did say it is important because creativity is important in advertising, because if your content is not that appealing, people will notice that right away, right? But even to be able to do a lot with little requires a lot of creativity, right? It requires a lot of creativity. So you will find the way forward for someone who doesn't have a lot of resource, right? Or is just, like you said, starting out, or like has a team that doesn't, I think you feel like you might have said that doesn't have that much, that doesn't have creativity. Is that what you were asking? So if they have like a team, the most important way to do it is to get everyone involved.
Okay.
Right? Start by getting everyone involved.
No, for a fact, when you're limited, maybe you're 5 people, not even 5, you're 3 people, and you've got all these deals that you're supposed to execute, and we've got to realize some people end up doing the same thing with a different brand, and you're like, now there's no sense of creativity. What leads to this?
Oh, what you're referring to is milling.
Okay.
Milling, like when you've done the ad so many times, that when
and now you're not doing anything new.
You're not doing anything new, yeah. So the client presents you, and then you enter the information and you generate something exactly like
what you have seen before, yeah.
Like what you have seen before. A lot of times, like you said, it's a question of resource in some of those organizations and some of the companies that do this.
Okay.
So you find like what would happen in that situation is they are milling, like they're just churning out content, like all the content has the same format, and then they churn it out, and the same format, and they churn it out. The aim there is to generate as much money as possible. For some of the content you find, even in this organization, in some of these companies, you find they are purchasing plugins, they are purchasing pre-built templates.
Okay.
Right. So a lot of sites, sometimes you find like Vimeo has a very good video editor in it. Okay. So they'll just go straight to Vimeo and then pick out motion graphics, and then it ends up being very generic.
Okay.
It is a strategy that might seem feasible in the short run, right? That might seem feasible in the short run, but in the long run, it is not very feasible. It's not viable, right? So it is it is better that you outsource if you have a situation like that, right? Where you are now churning out the same material. Bring in new staff every once in a while. They don't have to be permanent, right? You just bring them in and then work with them and then move on just generate industry relationships, right? It allows you to work with different minds from different spaces. You run the risk of working with people you don't understand that well, which is a situation where you aren't sure whether this person always delivers on time. So you can have someone and the work is amazing in their portfolio, but the work they submitted in their portfolio they will not be able to execute any of those pieces in any of the time you have available. And definitely you will not know this until they are actually doing the job and falling behind schedule, right? That's a risk you run, right? But if you're right, when you're right, you present your client with something new. And a lot of the times, if it's a repeat client, milling or giving them exactly the same stuff over and over again is going to reduce your approval rating. So you find that you submitted it this time, you went through the production pipeline, submitted the project, they take a look at it and they're like, oh yeah, it's very good, they liked it. Then you do it next time and it looks exactly the same, they'll have more revisions to it. They'll be like, no, change this, change this, change this, change this, and then you move on to the next one. Then what happens with that is that with production pipelines, the more changes they have, the longer it's going to take you to complete and the more resource you are going to require to complete it. You have put yourself in this position by deciding you wanted to take the shortcut, which is presenting this client with the same work over and over again.
Okay.
If you move from one client to the next, one client to the next, you would be lucky from time to time if it's a client who is just it's their first time doing this. What they want is they might not be looking for a product that is exceptional, so they're just looking for something that's just good enough, at least industry standard, right? So you will win with that client, but you can only do that so many times. Eventually, when they get accustomed or used to having industry standard material, right? They're going to want better. So at that point, you need to decide whether you are going to sit as a team and then come up with new material to move forward, or go with the solution I had proposed, which is start looking to work with other creatives outside your agency. You have 3-4 people. If you have very few people, bring one more person in, right? Speak with your client. A lot of times you will find that clients, when they ask for more or better, you can find that a lot of clients who you have generated a very good relationship with can be reasonable. You can let them know that we would require more money or more funding or more time to give you better. And because you have a very good track record with them, they will be willing to give it to you.
Okay. All right. Now, for the viewers out there, we still continue with our discussion regarding creativity in advertising and how important it is in regards to that. But how best can you do it is what we're going to be having after the break. Stick around. Good morning.